Quad 66. I think it's time to give these props a little bit of their own dedicated time. So these are, but I'm still calling it initial impressions. And let's talk about the props first. So these are the HQ new 3-inch props. They're very low pitch. They're 1.5 pitch. And so they call them their T3 by 1.5. And these are obviously the Biblades. I kind of like the Gem Fan, and I refer to these, so the Gem Fan nomenclature, and so I refer to these as the 3015s. And they do make, so, and this is what they look like, not mounted up. They come in a tri-blade version. That looks like that. And these are fine, but they didn't do anything for me in terms of improving anything that I thought was meaningful. And they had the usual issue of tri-blades of decreasing your dynamic range. And I'm not a total tri-blade hater, just to prove to you I do fly things on tri-blades, and you know, when the motor can really handle them and sling them around. But anyway, so the reason I want to talk about these now is because I've flown them on several builds. So this build is the most recent. This is the 1203 gnarly motor. It's a 7,000 kV motor, and I've been flying it on 2S. I've also tried this on 3S as well. I've flown this prop also, the HQ prop 3015, also on this 1S build. So these are the hyperlight motors. These are 1103, 12,600 kV motors. I've also flown it. I've drilled it out, used some screws, and flown it on these FPV cycle 1202.5 motors, and these are 11,500 kV. And the reason I want to give these props a little bit of their time to talk about is because all three of these builds with like these different approaches, these all flew well, and I think really fit in the category of where this is either really close or, you know, there when we're talking about a good backyard flyer, you know, good small space flyer, and with enough dynamic range to where you can go out to a park or a slightly bigger place and not be totally underwhelmed by it. And what I mean by dynamic range is that this prop can fly small and tight, but still punch out big enough to, you know, get over trees and things like that, and handle the power of 2S, 3S, and not go to pieces on you. And that's a nice, really nice property. And I think it, you know, compared to, for example, the Gem Fan 3018. In bigger places, I think the Gem Fan 3018 is probably going to, you know, take the day because it just has a little bit more top speed. And if you're not getting into the small and tight spaces, you're not really going to be noticing the main issue with this prop. And the reason I wouldn't call this a 1S prop. And the issue with that is that this is just, it's too much prop. It's too much pitch and too much hub. And you can kind of see the difference there where this motor really struggles to pull this prop out of the pit. So out of low RPMs, it really does kind of spool up, and it dulls the experience of flying this thing in small tight spaces. It takes away kind of that crisp snappiness, that racy kind of feel to it. And it's nice and smooth, and you can make some really good DVR with it because it's easy to fly. It's not hard to fly, but it's just not as satisfying as it could be. And when I throw this prop onto these motors, it cleans up some of those issues. Maybe it's not perfect, and I can't say 100% because with these motors there's an annoying little update that happened on these motors. So these shafts, obviously with FPV cycle, they went to the 2mm shaft, and I think that makes a lot of sense at this size motor, but some people don't. Like HQ doesn't think it makes sense, and the problem is now you've got a 1.5 and a 2, and those are not compatible. So to get these props onto these motors, what I had to do is I had to drill it out, and I didn't have the exact size drill to drill it and press it straight on, so I over drilled it a little bit and then used the screws to put it on. And there's logic there too, because you're not going to be thinking that, okay, did I just drill out that hole crooked and that's why there's vibrations or things like that. You're using the screw holes, and that should settle it on there nicely and not have vibrations. But when I did that, lo and behold, there was an issue that this shaft is just crazy long now. So this is a crazy tall hub for like this little tiny 1S motor, And you can see how on that hub, despite how big that hub is, that shaft comes right up above it. On the first batch motors, that wasn't the case. In the first batch, if you have a clear one here, you can see that that shaft only comes up about maybe 2/3 of the way up. And so the new motors have a longer shaft. And what that means is if you have something with a more normal or sane sized hub to it, is that that motor shaft pokes up above it. And because it's 2 millimeters and pokes up above it, when you try and put some screws on there, the screw heads actually interfere, or the shaft interferes with the screw holes. So I was able to mount it on there using some nylon screws, and they kind of bent outward a little bit, and they were a little bit quirky on there. And so when I flew it on this, although it cleaned up that kind of responsive issue, I think, without sacrificing too much top end, it introduced a new issue, which was vibration. And so I was thinking, oh gosh, is this the dreaded HQ vibration like from the T65 tri-blades? And is that just going to be horrible? But I think it's probably more likely to be, and I thought it was maybe dry vibration too, because on these motors I had, on the 1103s I had some vibration also. But I think this was because I couldn't get them to sit quite right, because the screws are a little wonky because of the interference with the shaft. And I think on these 1103s the vibration is that these motors just aren't that smooth, and so anything that isn't super forgiving of vibration just brings that out. So for example, if you threw the press-on props, the Who Cares 65 millimeter on this, it smooths it up and cleans it up, versus the T65 here, it's a little bit rougher, versus if you take these and throw it on like the AMAX motor. So on these with the little screws on there, this is super smooth. On these motors, on this, it's still a little rough. So I think it's more the motor issue. But anyway, so that was pretty annoying about this shaft issue thing. And although I want to really support Rugi for putting the time in to develop this motor, and I appreciate the work and cost and everything involved, I'm kind of motivated that when I kill these to go ahead and buy the RCN power with the 1.5 millimeter shaft, with the hopes that I can throw other props on there like this HQ and have a good nice fit and no problems with it. And I really hope that this shaft wasn't lengthened intentionally to go with these motors, because, or with this prop, because these GemFan props are just, you need a dedicated prop for this. I mean, you're doing, like, just, you got the motor, put a proper 1S prop on there. Like, cut down that hub size. You don't need all that hub on 1S. Take out a little bit of that pitch. Let the motors actually spin these things up and control them the way they should. Granted, I can't speak for everybody, obviously, because the way I like to fly and the place I like to fly is going to be a little bit different, but that's my take on it. And so anyways, what I'm motivated to buy, when I replace these, probably the RCN power with the smaller 1.5 millimeter shaft, and hopefully be able to use the HQ props, unless GemFan turns around and makes a dedicated 1S prop with a little less pitch, a little less mass. But anyway, so still, I was pleased with these motors. I love the way these props work on these, other than the vibration, but I'm a little bit curious to figure out the question of whether it just works because the KV is so high, and so that kind of gives you that authority on the prop. But I'm going to answer that question somewhere on a slow boat in between China and the US. I've got some SkyStars 1103 with 11,000 kV, and so I'll try and fly those and see if everything falls apart on the lower KV, or if the performance is still good and we get a little bit gentler amp draws and not puff batteries like this combination was doing, which is why I threw on these T65s. I was also really pleased the way this responded. So with these motors, I wasn't really sure about them. I tried them on a couple different props. I tried them on the HQ T3x2s, the GemFan 3018s, the 3016s. Did also fly them on these HQ tri-blade version of the 3015 T3 by 1.5. Also flew them on Evan Rush and GemFan 2540s, and just never, I was like a little bit underwhelmed, and finally I put these props on here, and lo and behold, it really brought this to life, where with the 525 battery, you get a ton of flight time, and although it's a little bit heavier than I like to fly in the backyard, like when Ryder's learning to fly split S, he kind of lost control a few times, and I was kind of ducking for cover. I was a little afraid to get hit by this, but it actually flew really well where I could fly small and do the little slalom around the bushes, and then have a nice big punch out, you know, over the trees. And so that's a really nice kind of viable option if you. It's a great dynamic range. You can fly small, you can fly big, and get good flight times out of it. So, anyways, with all that, I think that, you know, I still need some more of these to say whether the vibration issue is an issue or if it's a non-issue, and if it's consistently a non-issue. And if that's the case, then I can give these a pretty high recommendation. Before that, I'm hesitant to give them a high recommendation, but I think these are far enough along to where they're very worth trying. If you kind of, you know, if the way I fly resonates with the way you fly, then they are definitely worth trying. And, you know, I definitely also recommend them if you're trying the 1202.5. But, you know, I want to support people who actually put the work in, but I think for 1S, I think those RCN power motors, unfortunately, with the 1.5 millimeter shaft, unfortunately, I think that's just a better choice so that you can fly those HQ props. Even though I think the 2 millimeter, I think this is a better concept on these props, like to be able to just press on and not use screws and things like that, and the durability of it. But some people like HQ just don't believe in 2 millimeter shafts, and is what it is. So I think that's all I got. So DVR is from this, and it's not a very pretty DVR, but I wanted to give you something, and I'm flying it on, not on this battery, which is what I like to fly it on. Just flying it on, where'd it go? Hey, here a second ago. There it is. I was flying it on this little tiny 350, and this is, although the flight time was fine for me with what I was doing, there's just not enough weight, and so it's really hard to fly it. Once I got the feel for it, it's not that it's hard, you just need to get the feel for it, but it took me a while to get the feel for flying the low throttle and stuff like that. And so there's not a lot of DVR, it's part of a pack, it's not even a full pack. And I'm also not aggressive too, because this is Ryder's quad and I don't want to kill it. But I wanted that to be there. Also, it doesn't look smooth because Ryder was learning a split S on these, and so these props are just kind of beat to heck at this point with some bends that I straightened out. So if you're wondering why there's a little jello and vibration, I think you can see it right there, that one. It's pretty badly bent. But I did want to leave you with that. No music on it because it's late and I'm tired and I don't feel like trying to figure something out for music on it. But that's what I got for right now. So HQ T3 by 1.5 Biblades. I recommend them, you know, pending balanced or reliability issues. Tri-blade, I didn't find much benefit, and I'm not, I promise, I swear, I'm not a tri-blade hater. I fly stuff on tri-blades, I really do, and I like it on some stuff, particularly when the motors can really manhandle the tri-blade. But I think the biblades for small light stuff just give you better dynamic range, and I prefer them. Alright, that's it. Till next time, cheers.